Welcome back. We are ordinary people indeed, but principles by which we live would see us get to where we need to get to and make better our environment and ourselves. Now, I'm talking about making ourselves better and our environment. Let's look at the issues of population. The world today is celebrated annually. The world population is celebrated annually every 11th day of July. So that happens. This happened
Thursday.
According to the United Nations, the day seeks to focus attention on the urgency and importance of population issues and was established by the then Governing Council of the United Nations Development Programme in 1989, an outgrowth of the interest generated by the Day of 5 Billion, which was observed on the 11th of July in 1987. This year's World Population Day calls for global attention to the unfinished business of the 1994 International Conference on Population and Development. What's that unfinished business? The United Nations says current estimates indicate that roughly 83 million people are being added to the world's population every year. Even assuming that fertility levels will continue to decline, the global population is expected to reach 8.6 billion in 2020 and 9.8 billion in 2050, 11.2 billion in 2100. But in all of these things, Nigeria's population, it is said that Nigeria is likely to be the most or the third most populated country by 2030 or by 2050. By 2050, the third most populous country. For now, we share China and India. So, and the US, but Nigeria is inching up the way things are going. But that's, it's not Lara and I that are having this conversation.
Did you say inching? We're not inching, we're galloping.
Okay, okay, so to help us understand all of this and talk about it deeper, we have in the studio Dr. Joseph Onoja of the Nigeria Conservation Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
There's no way we'll talk about population or talk about environment without talking about the effect of the population on the environment. But let's look at the environment, the World Population Day celebration and the theme. What do you think the situation, how do you analyze the situation as it is?
I think it was good that we are beginning to look at things from the systemic approach, not just from one angle, to see how whatever we do affects other aspects of our lives. And we in the natural resource management, we always implicate population as one of the major drivers of depletion of our natural resources. And it's happening that this year, there's a focus on that, looking at population and how it affects our natural resources, our environment, because we cannot continue business as usual. Yeah, globally, we have an issue. And I must say, with politicians, population is something that is a very sensitive issue that people don't want to go into because of different aspects. But it has come to the time where we need to table this and look at our face, as I'll say, eyeball to eyeball, and tell ourselves the truth. Because there's what we call carrying capacity. In every space, there is a carrying capacity. And this space called Nigeria, which is about 900,000 square kilometers, used to harbor 60 million people at independence. Now, depending on your statistics, going back and forth, let's say we are 200 million people. Nigeria.
Okay, are we inching towards, are we reaching our tether's end?
Whether we like it or not, we are. Okay. Because there are other confounding factors.
All right, just hold your thoughts there. Let's bring in someone that will help us understand whether we are getting to our tether's end. The acting chairperson of the National Population Commission, Abimbola Hussein, joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you.
The question was put to Dr. Onoja, is Nigeria inching towards its tether's end? And he says, we are there, not that we are approaching it. But what do you say, you being in charge of the Populations Commission?
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for bringing me once again to this program. I would say that what my brother just said is a reality, but there should be no fear. Why I have said that is we all know that population issues are human lives issues. They are human lives based. And I'd like to start by saying that I want to thank Mr. President because in his speech in his democracy speech, he devoted quality time to discuss population matters. He did say in that speech, he's aware that we are actually the population of Nigeria is growing in leaps and bounds. He acknowledged that, and he is very concerned on solutions. And that's why we are happy at the Population Commission, because we know that there is hope and there are solutions to these problems. All we need to do is to put the right indices in place. I must be honest with us, the indicators are not, they can be a bit fearful, like my brother said. But like I said, there are ways to put it right. We can still manage our population and reap the benefits we should reap as a huge population. Having a huge population in itself is not totally disadvantageous. It is the use and the resources we put to it that makes it what we want. And I'm happy that even Mr. President is aware now that if we don't do anything very soon, we could find ourselves in the position my brother is talking about. So that's why we are here to say that one of the major things we need to do, because like I did say, population issues are human issues. And how do you tackle human issues? You need data. Without appropriate, adequate, reliable, and verifiable data, you cannot tackle these issues. And the mother of all data is the census. It is high time now we have a census. When we have a census, a lot of issues that are of burden even to Mr. President that I could read from his speech, because he's a father to us in this nation and is concerned, and we are very happy about that, will be solved. Because our census will be able to give us a lot of data. A lot of things we're probably afraid of might not turn out like that. And when you have data, 50% of the problems are solved, because we'll be able to know that really women are more than men, or men are more than women. We'll be able to know that our adolescents, as of today, are about 70%. Are they put into useful use? You know that youth represents strength. Youth represents age. That's the essence of demographic dividend. Have we been able to take benefit of demographic dividend? Our youth, are they truly gainfully employed so that the rate of dependency can reduce? Because if they are, since they form the bulk of our population, if they are using their energy positively, if the nation encourages that, if we put in place machineries to help our youths to do the right things, to help them to have gainful employment, then the old and the young begin to depend on them. And then this huge population will become advantageous. Everybody would have what it takes, and then we'll be able to move on the way we should move on. That's what is called sustainable development. And that's what we are talking about. But you cannot have it, this is what we've been saying, without data. The greatest data, the mother of all data, is a census. That's
I have to interrupt you here. Just, we'll come back to you.
Thank you. We've since been joined by Mrs. Temitokwe Okuno, who is founder, FABE International Foundation. Thanks for joining us. Now, this issue of our population growth, it doesn't seem to be a new thing. Because if you think back, when Babangida was our president, there was actually a law limiting families to 4 children only. Whether it was enforced or not is another issue entirely. So it seems that we have been awake to the matter of our population growth, that it was getting out of hand for some time. So what is it that is militating against us actually doing something about containing the growth of this population?
Well, doing something about the population growth is something for us, you know, seeing the nation in this capacity scares me. In the sense that I was sharing on Thursday World Population Day, and I moved from the mainland to Lekki, and I thought Lekki was just, you know, a same area where you just, you know, the highbrow places and where you just have limited people and all of that. Going into Lekki was a disaster. My intention was just to have the life of my time, you know, and the first time I moved into Lekki and then I wanted to go out and come back, I spent 4 hours on the traffic. On the road. And then my husband came back from Abuja on a Monday. He had to spend about 5 to 6 hours on traffic. And I'm thinking, where did all these people come from?
This hold that thought. You'll answer that question when we come back from this break. Please join us again. Welcome back. So, Mr. Okunu, you were talking about, you asked the question, where are all these people coming from? Have you found an answer yet?
No, I haven't. But I'm yet to find out. But from statistics and research studies and all of that, you know, so many people are born, you know, into the world every day, particularly in Nigeria. When I was studying for my presentation on World Population Day, World Population Day, you know, I ran into this website, metroworld.info, and you know, I found out that Nigeria currently at that time was 201,085,009 million in population. So Thursday morning when I was supposed to come to the program, it has increased. Then I said, what's going on? How is this happening? Every day.
They said the population rate in Nigeria is about over 3%.
Yes.
Now, but the figure, there's a disparity of which figure is exactly correct. The where NPC says is about 190.
Ask Mrs. Hunde.
The question is actually going to go to her.
Yes, we
the
should.
UN says about 200.
200.
Then this world population,
Yeah,
the site is about
201.
201 million. But at the same time, we have the figure that Nigeria loses women in childbearing age 145 per day.
So, maternal and infant mortality. Yeah.
So are we having the same number or 3 times that number if it's 3% being born every day? Mrs. Hunde, can you help us there? What exactly is the population figure of Nigeria now?
Well, I did start my statement then by letting us know that we cannot have proper solutions until we have accurate data. And by that, I told us that the census is the key because it's the mother of all data. The population of Nigeria as at today has always been on the estimate level, what we call extrapolation. And how do we arrive at that? The last population and housing census we had was in 2006. And that time, we arrived at a population growth rate of 3.2%. What we do, or what every nation does, your population growth rate, which you arrive at every census, is what you use in now estimating your yearly growth rate. And that's why you plan for the next 10 years. We're all aware that a lot of countries have their censuses in 10, except some now that have decided to bring it down to 5 years. We're saying that the periodicity of census taking, in between that period, the growth rate you've arrived at the last census would help you to now plan for the next 10 years. We have had our own since 2006. We're still using that growth rate up till date. So you would forgive the National Population Commission if we're not able to come up with a specific figure, or even the United Nations, or even the UNFPA, because they rely on us to give this specific figure, which we can only arrive at after carrying out census. So I can also only tell you the estimate that we're working with. We're working with between 201 or 206 million. That's what we're working with. Some will even tell you it's 214 if you use 3.2 flat rates. So you see, and in population figures, that's a huge gap. And it's a huge, huge death. It's not that easy. And it will not help any nation, especially a nation as huge as Nigeria. No government, and I say it again, no government can manage a huge population like this without appropriate data. They will just be beating their fists in the air. It's like winking in the dark. You cannot know. I just listened to us now. UNFPA mentioned education, they mentioned health. These are indicators, they are indices, they are things we need to have sustainable development, to have better lives. That's the essence of population, to have improved lifestyle.
Mrs. Hundayi, I do beg your pardon. Does this figure also take into account the number of deaths? Because we hear that life expectancy in Nigeria is actually lowering.
It does. It does. It takes care of the numbers of deaths, because what we do at the Population Commission, we have birth registration, which is free. It's an ongoing activity. It's a daily activity. It's a continuous activity. We also have death registration, which is almost free as well. So what we do is to take the 3.2%, we have the number of births being given in a year. We look at the number of deaths. We now take the migration. We look for the average or the median, and then we say, okay, this is the best we can. And we look at a lot of other factors, and then we say, well, for now, this is the best we can give you. But you see, for Mr. President's pain to be eased, because from his June 12 speech, it's obvious Mr. President is at pains to over the astronomical growth of our population without adequate resources to meet the needs of the citizens. For his pains to be eased.
Thank you, Mrs. Hundayi. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Hundayi. Now, let's bring the conversation back to the studio. Mr. Onoja, I've lost.
She's talked about the estimates, extrapolation and all of that. Yeah. But you being an environmentalist, if we're looking at that growth rate of 3.2%, she gave a figure that we could work with, 201 to 214 as the case may be. Okay. But how is that affecting the environment?
Yeah.
And what can we do? Seeing that the landmass is not even increasing.
Yeah. So actually, that is where our concern is actually. Yes, we can, as she said, the human population is about human, and we cannot just kill people because we want to reduce the population. No, we are not saying that. But what we're saying is that if we don't do something, we rightly said that we are using a resources that is not renewable. We continue to increase, but our land mass is not increasing. The way it was, 923,000 square kilometers is still that same way. But then it used to be 60 million people at independence. Now we're talking about between 200 and 214 million people in still that same square kilometer. So the impact is obvious. It has several impacts. And when you impact the environment, there's a backlash usually. And then we're talking about, we celebrated beating air pollution during the World Environment Day. Definitely, if there were 200 cars at that time, there will be, if you multiply that by the growth rate, if we use that, there will be over 200,000 cars. So imagine what level of CO2 they will be giving out. And then this CO2, if someone said that in his, during the presentation, someone said, the PS environment said, when you breathe out, in his own, in his layman's biology, when you breathe out, he knows that trees are there to collect what you breathe out. And when they breathe out, you are there to collect what trees breathe out, because they breathe out oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide, and there's this exchange. But if there are no trees, when you breathe out, what do you breathe in? Poison. You breathe another CO2 in. Poison. So it's killing us. So if you put everything together, it is, when we cry about the environment, we're not necessarily concerned about the environment per se, but it's about humans at the end of the day. The environment will always take care of itself. Like, let us deplete it as much as we can. But what will be at the receiving end? I always say that humans are the least equipped to live on Earth, in the sense that our skins are so bare, we don't have teeth. Our teeth, we don't have canine. We can barely eat, and we don't have claws. So anything will just wipe us out. So if we don't use our resources sustainably, we'll get to that carrying capacity. You know, if you look at the graph of a carrying capacity, when the population goes and reaches its carrying capacity, what happens? There's a collapse.
Yeah.
We don't
Not
want
only a gradual one, it's like a steep collapse.
A steep collapse because everybody is rushing. Imagine what will happen when we don't have enough oxygen to breathe. Because as our population is expanding, with the forests that we have, we are cutting down.
Scary picture.
It is reality. We are cutting it down, and that is why we are losing our forests at a rate that is well 5 points, and the net loss of forest by 2015 in Nigeria is 5%. That is the 5th in the world. But those other countries that precede us have larger forest reserve, have larger forest cover more than us. And that is why let us try as much. It is a collective effort.
We'll still talk about this, the effect of human population on the environment. But let me bring this to you. Why do you think it's been a problem curbing the growth?
Simple. People keep procreating. And then there is nothing our government or even we ourselves are doing about it. We are still procreating, you know? And the more we procreate, I mean, okay, let's take, for example, the more people come into the environment through migration, not just procreation, through migration. I mean, people leave the rural areas, come to the urban areas in search of work, food, and, you know, greener pastures. I mean, okay. Okay, so these people would have to compete with the limited supply of natural resources that we have already. Let's say, for example, Lagos. Everybody wants to come to Lagos. I mean, you see one or your girl, Lagos, I want to be in Lagos. Many of our domestic staffs that we employ, many of them, it is Lagos we want to stay. So it's evident that everybody wants to come to Lagos, taking that geographical location, for example. Now, these people come to Lagos. Does Lagos have the carrying capacity, like you said, or the availability to accommodate these people in the first place? And then number two, have we actually even thought about the health implication, you know, of, you know, the growth, people, you know? Have we thought about even how this growth has come to be through early child marriages? I mean, child brides, like we all have been talking about recently. And then, like they say, I just want to put this polygamy in nature of men into play. Everybody wants to, you know, just like the Lagos State Permanent Secretary mentioned on World Population Day. Everybody just wants to shoot and spray. So how, I mean, the growth cannot be curbed if people are not educated. They're not enlightened. We need to take the education to schools and to religious organizations. We need our pastors and imams to start talking about, I mean, prevention. I mean, sex education, control, birth control.
Do you think we'll ever get to a stage like China did, where it made legislation? One child per family, full stop.
I don't think so, because Nigeria is completely different.
Okay.
Our tradition, our culture would not allow us to.
Let me take you back to something that Mrs. Hundayi referred to, the issue of registration of births and registration of deaths. How accurate are those in Nigeria, when we know very well most births or deaths in the villages don't get registered?
Well, that's what I was going to say. How many people are educated enough to know that they're supposed to register their deaths? How many people are educated enough that they're supposed to know that they're supposed to register their births? I mean, some of these women, because of population growth, even some of them die when they give birth because of lack of medical facilities and care. Some of the children, in fact, I raised the question that if you say fertility rate is declining in Nigeria, and yet you see so many people booming from everywhere, you know, in the country, how is that possible? I asked.
Who are those having all those babies?
Yes, you know, who are those having all those babies? And, well, we didn't really get to, you know, we can't actually get to why, but some of the factors we can relate to.
Okay, Dr. Hundayi, there's a mail here from Kent in the UK and Ogulaha Ambrose and what's the other person's name? They sent in different mails, and I thought I should bring it to you. Igwe sent in his mail from Kent, and then Ambrose as well. But let me read Ambrose's mail to you first. He says, how do you incorporate the influx of non-indigents or aliens, as the case may be, that the leaders have said are the people terrorizing the country? Are they not making the population to increase unnecessarily? And then Igwe, who wrote in from Kent, says, Nigeria's population is overestimated for political purposes. He says the last election will tell you what you need to know. You don't need data. Just look at the last election. That's coming from Igwe. But so if you put the two together, inflated for political purposes, and from the last election, you could put your data together. And then the fact that we've been told by leaders in certain quarters that they are foreigners coming to the country and they're the ones terrorizing Nigerians. Are those foreigners also taken into account when you're talking about the population figure of the country?
Thank you very much. I must say that there's a bit of a break, so I'll just try and put what you've said together. I didn't hear everything, but if I heard the things I heard, I would reply on that. Saying that when you just look at the last election, you can get the population data. I think that's due to ignorance on the part of my brother. Election can never give you the accurate data. People voting are from 18 and above. We have people from under 18. We have people who don't even bother to vote. We have people, even though they are educated, they just say, I'm not interested in registering. That can never be the basis for census. I mean, it can never give you accurate data of a nation. Because you see, census gives you a complete profile of your country. It gives you the demographic profile of the people. It even goes beyond. We intend to go beyond. We'll tell you the income rate of people now. We'll tell you their power. It helps you to even deduce economic activities in the nation. Census gives everything about your country, the characteristics of the people, their demographies, their profile. So you cannot use election. Election would only tell you how many people can vote. That is that. The first one, I didn't hear you properly well. But if what I thought I heard is that people coming in who are terrorizing Nigeria, did he say, we also register them? I don't know what you said. But if that's what I thought I heard, we do not register adults. I told you we only do birth registration. That means we determine the first identity of a child in this country. We have said it consistently, and NIMSI, our brother and sister at NIMSI, are beginning to understand us. That for you to get a NIMSI identity card, you must get a birth registration certificate from the National Population Commission or an attestation certificate. If you don't have that, that is the foundation. That is what tells you that you are a Nigerian. Because we have people coming into our country as well. Now, the new passport is being issued, and they're asking for NIMSI ID. I want to state here that there is a fault there, there's a flaw. And the flaw is that NIMSI, without our own birth registration certificate, should not give an identity card. And the passport office should not issue a passport to somebody without a first identity saying, I am a Nigerian. I am from Badagry, you can see from my name, which is close to the border of Cotonou. I can tell you a story. My cook is from Cotonou. He was coming in from Cotonou one day through land border in Badagry town. And he said they were going to turn them back. He's hearing me now, so it's the truth. And he just thought of it. When he got there, he said, my name is Hundein. I said, oh, that's a Badagry person, just going. But he's not. Do you understand what I'm saying? You have people from Niger Republic that have a similar names with Kano people, with northern people. So if NIMSI gives you ID card without your first identity, which is a foundation, we'll still get it wrong. That's why all of us have to work together. We all need to harness the data. And the best way to do that is to first of all have these population and housing census, where a total demographic picture profile of Nigeria will be given.
Okay, Dr. Hundein, I would need to go on a quick break. We'll come back to wrap up this conversation. And one of the things we need to look at, especially from the population census area, is that death and birth certificates are free. But in some parts of this country, they are actually paid for. But we'll look at that when we come back from the break. Join us again. Our closing moment. Let me start with you, Dr. Hundeyin. The question I asked before we went on that break had to do with birth and death certificates. They're supposed to be free. Correct us if I want to believe that we're correct here, that they're supposed to be free. But in some parts of the country, they are paid for. Why is that so?
I would say this today as the acting chairman of National Population Commission. And please believe me, in Nigeria, believe me, birth registration is totally free. If you go for anybody under 18 years old, if you go to any of our offices, we have offices in all the 774 local governments of Nigeria. We have birth registrations spread across these local governments. Anybody that asks you to pay a kobo for your birth registration, please, we now have phone centers, call us, and we will deal with such a staff. Birth registration in Nigeria is free for any child under the age of 18. This is a position.
All right.
Birth registration is not totally free. You pay a token. It's just a token. But birth is free. But we have a problem with the death registration. A lot of Nigerians don't like registering their deaths until they insist they cannot bury them, especially I'm aware in Lagos. You know, I was a federal commissioner representing Lagos State. Lagos State will not let you bury your dead at the burial ground if you don't have a birth certificate. So, I mean, death certificate, so they will come. But a lot of states do not bother. So we want to encourage states now, governments, to please put policies in place that would insist that you cannot bury anybody unless there is a death certificate. This would also help our data in this country, and it will help us to plan better. It will ease the pain of Mr. President. My brother on environment was talking about limited resources. But we do know there are nations of the world, especially most advanced countries, don't even have as much as we have. But they are surviving, doing better. The reason is they plan. Until we begin to make population issues part of our economic and development strategies, we cannot go further. And we cannot make it that way if we don't have the accurate data. We therefore need the census, Mr. President, sir, to ease your pain, to help you manage better, to achieve what past our leaders have been yearning to achieve. And we know you want to give us a better regime. The only way, sir, is to have this population and housing census.
Thank you. Dr. Hundeyin, thank you very much. Mrs. Okuno. Now, we have this mail. Samson Oderinde says, while working on conduction of census, the truth of the matter is that something must be done to curtail the trend. People increasing Nigeria's population geometrically are not watching this program. Neither do they have access to awareness like this. They don't even need health officers' attention to carry out multiple deliveries. What should be done? What can be done? I mean, from the point of view, not just from the government, from non-government civil society groups as well, in terms of educating about population.
Yes, that's what I want to say that. I mean, it still boils down to education. We need the education to not just come from the government or the health officers alone. It should be taught in schools and in religious organizations, churches, mosques, and the rest. Our clergymen should reiterate this. Most of them do not believe in family planning and birth control pills, but I beg to differ. I mean, when God said replenish the earth, you know, he was talking about us, yeah, being fruitful and all of that. But in this case, even another passage says, do everything in moderation, decently, and in order. So when you're giving birth, I mean, there should be a sense of control. So we should always reiterate this when we talk to the student. They should know about infant mortality, so they get aware. They should know about the fact that they need to control, I mean, not just the children, but the women as well. So we can take education to all those places. And I'm sure that with much more awareness, people will understand that they need to cut down the way we give birth.
Procreate.
That's another.
Yeah.
The way forward.
Well, Dr. Hundeyin talked about planning, yes, population, but those countries that are doing well with what they have, they are probably using it sustainably. We don't use our sustainable as it is. Because if we have been using our, especially let me use the forest resources sustainably, we will not be struggling with less than 5% of our forest. When we had over 46% during independence. And our population actually can be an advantage. Because if each and every one of us take it as a responsibility, imagine having 200 million trees being planted in Nigeria. I mean, everywhere will be trees, and that's what we're trying to use leverage on our population, create awareness whereby each and every one of us will take a responsibility on the well-being of the environment. Yes, our population can be a plus for us if we use it wisely, especially with our resources. Someone said we can grow vertically. Yeah, if we grow vertically, for instance, we still produce waste, and it ends up in the environment.
All right. Thank you very much. Nsika Inyang, Doctor, you need to answer this question. Just get to the point and answer it. Nsika Inyang says that his in-law paid birth registration, but she heard that she's asking that they say that you pay a token for death registration. So he's asking, how much is that token? Dr. Onei.
I think what we pay for death registration is about 1,000 naira. 500 naira. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Abimbola Hudein is the acting chairperson, National Population Commission. Joined us from our Abuja studio. Here in Lagos, we have Joseph Onoja, Nigeria Conservation Foundation, and Temitope Okunu, founder of FAVE International Foundation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much.
So now we'll be back in a moment. Please join us again.